Hey class. So hopefully by now you've started feeling a little more comfortable using Snap to create simple projects like the kaleidoscope and drawing shapes. But we want to be able to do more interesting things in Snap, like create stories and games. Stories and games, however, often have characters that are represented as sprites. Right now, our sprites look boring, like this. So today we're going to learn a couple of cool things. We're going to learn how to be able to animate our Snap sprites using something called Costume. And you're going to learn how to trigger action from one sprite to another sprite using something called Broadcasts. So I'm going to switch over to Snap and then we can get started. Okay, so here's my sprite. And let's say I want to give it a bat costume. So what I can do here is go to File, click on Costumes, and here I'll see a list of costumes that Snap comes with predefined. So let's click on Bat 1A. And so here I have a bat. I'm going to drag it to the left side. I can treat this sprite just like I have treated any of my other normal sprites. So for example, say I want the bat to move right whenever I press the right arrow. So I'm going to go here to Control, and I'll say when space key is pressed, but instead of space key, I want it to be the right arrow. Whenever the right arrow key is pressed, I want it to, let's say, move forward. Let's make it 50 steps. So let's try it out. As I press the right arrow key, my bat is moving, just like I'd expect. But this is also not that interesting. I mean, the bat doesn't even look like it's flying as it's moving. Well, one cool thing is I can add other costumes to this bat. So if I go to the Costumes tab, I see this one costume that I added. I'm actually going to go to File, Costumes, and add Bat 1B. And so now it looks like the wings of the bat are moved down. This is up, this is down. I don't want to obviously keep clicking on the costume to change it. I want to be able to do this programmatically. So let's go back here to Script. The way you control your costumes is in the Looks category. So whenever I move, I also wanted to go to, let's say, the next costume. And this way, it'll just keep going to whatever the next costume is, and it can cycle. So it's okay to keep reusing the same costume that you've already used before. So now let's try it. As you can see, this time it looks like the bat is actually flying. And that's how you create simple animations. The cool thing is you don't just need to use the library that Snap comes with. You can draw your own pictures. So let's say I just wanted to add my own bat. I can click on this and I don't know, maybe just draw some wings. Okay, clearly I'm not that great at drawing bats, but I'm going to click OK, and you can see that this bat is here. So now if I were to, run my script, just press the right arrow key, it would actually flip between that bat too. So the other thing you can do is say you drew a picture and or you got one from the internet and you saved it to your desktop. You can also drag the file that you saved onto here, or you can just go to File and Import, and in your File Explorer, you can just choose the file you wanted to import, and that'll add it over here as another costume. So I'm going to go ahead and actually delete this one because I don't really like my drawing. And for the next part, let's say instead of wanting to press the right arrow key to move 50 steps, I actually wanted to press a button when I wanted the sprite to move. So I'm going to go back to costumes real quick, click the bat. So it's not at the turtle. It actually does use those costumes. And going to create another sprite. And this time I'm just going to draw a circle. That's going to be my button. So I'm going to put it here. Now, as I said, I don't want the bat to be triggered by the right arrow key. I want it to be triggered when this button is clicked. So if I go to control, I can see that there is this control that says when I am clicked. Now, when it's clicked, the bat doesn't know that the bat should move because this script applies to the button. So what the button can do is use this thing called broadcast. In broadcast, you can basically create messages that you want to broadcast to other sprites. You can call the message whatever you want, but generally it's better to give it a meaningful name so you remember what it means. So I'm going to call this button clicked. And now I'll go back to my bat costume. So here the button is broadcasting. The button is clicked whenever it's clicked, but it's not actually doing anything with the bat because the bat doesn't know. The bat isn't listening to when the button is clicked. The way you do that, so I'm going to first get rid of when the right arrow key is pressed because we don't want to use that anymore. Instead, it's going to use when I receive. So when I receive is for receiving messages that you output using the broadcast block. So now if I click on this, you'll see that the button clicked message appears here. So I'm going to click on this. And now let's see if this works. So that's pretty cool. Now my button is actually triggering an action in the bat. And that's how you can get sprites to interact with each other. Now, let's say we actually, for some reason, wanted the button to have a conversation with a bat. I'm going to go back to the button, and when it's clicked, instead of triggering the movement in the bat, it's going to, let's go to looks, it's going to just say, ask the bat, what is your name? Now, when it's clicked, it asks what's your name, but the bat doesn't know that the button just asked what its name is. And so once again, we're going to go to broadcast. We're going to say broadcast, and let's say ask name. So now here, we'll say when I received ask name, the bat is going to say, my name is Mr. Bat. So let's try that out. That's cool. Now the button is actually talking to the bat. Now say the bat wanted to respond, say the button wanted to respond, and the button is now going to say, nice to meet you. Let's see what happens when we run that. Did you see that? The button started talking as soon as the bat started talking. Let me do that again. So I click it. Now watch. The button isn't actually waiting for the bat to finish talking before it responds and says, nice to meet you. This is probably not what we want. So the way you can do that is instead of using broadcast, you can use something called broadcast and wait. So now I'm going to say broadcast and wait. and then it's going to respond, and now let's try it out. Just like you'd expect. So basically, what broadcast does is it sends a message, and then any other sprite that receives that message, if they want to do something with it, they can. They know that they've received that message, and so they can trigger whatever action they want in themselves. But the sprite that broadcasts it can continue doing whatever it was doing before. If you broadcast and wait, then the sprite actually waits for the other sprite to finish, whichever sprites received the message, for those sprites to finish before it continues doing its own action. So for example, say I asked you guys a question, and then so basically I've broadcast the fact that I've asked you guys a question, and then you respond to me. In that case, I'll probably be waiting for you guys to respond before I say something, because I care about what you're saying. So that would be a broadcast and wait. But now in class, for example, say that I'm going to hang up the classroom call, so you guys should continue on your labs. In that case, I'm not going to wait for you guys to finish your labs before I continue on with my day. So that would be a broadcast, so you guys know that, hey, we should start on our labs, but I can keep doing what I was going to do, which is probably close the call and then continue having individual Skype conversations with you guys. So that's an example of when you want to use just broadcast. So if one interesting thing is here, say the other way I could have done the exact same thing in terms of what the output is instead of using a broadcast and wait, I could have said, could still do broadcast, ask name, and then the bat would reply with, my name is Mr. Bat. And then the bat can broadcast, nope, not broadcast and wait, the bat can broadcast, and maybe we'll call it done answering. And now when the button receives done answering, then it can reply, nice to meet you. And see, that also does the same thing. This actually just goes to show that there are multiple ways to do the same thing. And so oftentimes there's not just one correct way to get the output that you want. So before I end this video, I just want to say I want you guys to kind of think of examples of when you would use broadcast, when you would use broadcast and wait, and write those down in your notebooks. So we'll probably discuss them in class. It's really important for you guys to understand the difference. They're very powerful blocks, and so if you understand how to know them well, you can do some really cool things in Snap. Bye, class.